Yes, optional weapons. All the way from the Blade of Artemis to the Arms of Sparta, the God of War series has always made sure we players have enough weapons to kill all manner of mythological creatures in new and stylish ways. So it's understandable when fans ask how Santa Monica is going to evolve this tradition with God of War Ragnarok. Because let's be honest, as fun as the Leviathan Axe, the Blades of Chaos, and Kratos' good old fist were to use in God of War 2018, we were left wanting more. So in this video, I will be giving my opinion on the age-old question, will either Kratos or Atreus ever wield Mjolnir? So let's begin. Hey, how's it going guys, Kaptain Kuba here, and today I wanted to expand on a discussion we had a while back in one of my streams. Now for those of you who are new to the topic, I feel like I should start from the very beginning. Ever since God of War 2018 was confirmed to take place in the Norse pantheon, fans have been asking whether Kratos would ever use Mjolnir, easily one of the most recognizable weapons in the fantasy genre. This level of fame obviously goes all the way back to when the original Norse stories were written, but it didn't really reach the mainstream until Marvel picked it up with its debut of one of their most popular heroes, Thor. And now with the MCU, this hammer has never been more popular. That is until God of War 2018 was released. This small clip of Thor removing part of his cloak and revealing to the player his mighty weapon has sent shivers of excitement down every God of War fan's back. So it's understandable when I get asked the same question hundreds of times. So in this video, I'm finally giving my opinion on whether Kratos or Atreus will wield Mjolnir. Now the first thing I have to address with this topic is a common misconception. After playing God of War 2018, many fans have come to me asking me whether or not Kratos is worthy to wield Mjolnir. The flaw in this question is that it assumes that Mjolnir from Marvel is the same as the one from Norse mythology, and this couldn't be further from the truth. In Marvel, being worthy is a requirement to even hold the fabled hammer. While in traditional Norse mythology, any character can wield it provided they are physically strong enough to lift it. Now we know for a fact Santa Monica was inspired by the original hammer from Norse mythology, because in one of the boat stories with Mimir, he tells of a giant who temporarily stole Thor's hammer.
This one is Thrym, a frost giant king.
Correct. A cunning one as well.
Is that Mjolnir? Did he steal Thor's hammer?
Aye, for a time.
A lot of these seem to end with Thor killing them.
Imagine that.
So the question we have to answer is not whether Kratos is worthy, but whether he's strong enough to pick up the hammer. And I think this question should be easy enough to answer. But Kratos lifting Mjolnir is the least of our problems when answering whether Mjolnir will be a weapon or not. The first big problem we have is the importance of Thor in the story. You see, ever since God of War was moved to the Norse pantheon, fans have been dying to fight Thor. Sure, Odin is the old father, but Thor is the big baddie everyone wants to kill. And Santa Monica is aware of this excitement, given that he was heavily teased in the previous game multiple times as well as during the ending. So if Thor were to die at the beginning of the game, fans would understandably be pretty disappointed. But it turns out that fans are divided on whether Thor will die at the middle of the story or at the end. When I asked on YouTube, most people voted for his death to take place at the end of the game, but not by much. And when I asked the Twitter community, most people voted for his death to take place at the middle of the story, but once again, not by much. Now why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because depending on when Thor's death will happen, we might not get Mjolnir as a weapon. Think about it, every optional weapon in the God of War series has always been acquired very early in the game or somewhere in the middle of the story. Even the less important weapons from a story perspective follow this rule as well. This is done so the player has enough time to level up their new weapon before the game is over. So let's go back to the poll. No one believes that Thor will die at the beginning of the game. Good. People on Twitter believe that he will die at the middle of the story and Kratos will get to use the hammer to kill Odin. And people on YouTube believe that Thor will die at the end, which could possibly result in Thor's hammer becoming a game plus weapon just like the Blade of Olympus in God of War 2, or not a weapon at all. In one hand you have a playthrough with a really iconic weapon, and on the other hand you have a playthrough that takes its time to develop Thor as a proper character. The question for the God of War community is, which playthrough do you prefer? I, believe it or not, fall on the side with people who want Thor to be killed at the end of the game. Like Kaptain here says, Thor is way too important. There's no way Santa Monica is building him up as one of the three main antagonists of the game and then go off and kill him at the beginning or even at the middle of the game. This would just take away all the tension in the story. I have a suspicion that Thor will be the final boss and Odin will escape his death with the help of someone. I know this is a very specific prediction, but much like Thor dying early in the game doesn't make much sense, Odin dying in this game doesn't make sense at all. Because the way Santa Monica is portraying Odin is as someone who always has a plan. I think it will be a shame if we go into Ragnarok and kill him for good. I honestly think Odin will escape his death with the help of someone, maybe Athena, the other crafty deity who always has a plan. Now, even though I believe Thor will die at the end of the game, I still think Santa Monica can do something to give us his hammer as well. So let me put on my fake God of War director's hat and give you a few theories. Theory number 1 involves the first timeline. As you guys know, Jormungandr came from the future after Thor hit him so hard with his hammer that he splintered the world 3, sending him back in time. The place where Jormungandr came from is what I'm calling the first timeline. Even though it's not confirmed yet, it sounds like the gods were victorious in the first timeline. Maybe somewhere around the middle of God of War Ragnarok's story, Kratos and Atreus will engage in some time travel shenanigans and will end up in the previous timeline or a completely new timeline where obtaining the hammer is not too difficult. Similar to what the Avengers did with the Infinity Stones in Endgame. After that, they will return to their current timeline with a different Mjolnir and will face Thor at the end of the game. Personally, I think this is the best way to get an iconic weapon, as well as giving Thor a proper death at the end of the game. My next theory is a little out there, but I think some of you might like it. This theory is inspired by a fan art created by Ronnie Wong. What if during the second fight with Thor, something like this happens? Kratos gets a hold of Mjolnir, and Thor gets a hold of the Leviathan axe. And for some unknown reason, the fight gets stopped and they both go their separate ways. Both of them with a brand new weapon. Now remember that Leviathan was created to rival Thor's Mjolnir, so it's not like Thor will be losing any power. And we as the player wouldn't have too difficult of a time adapting to the new weapon, since both weapons share the same ability of being called back. And once we fight Thor at the end of the game, we can collect Leviathan and keep Mjolnir for the after game section as well. Yeah, I know this idea has a lot of flaws, but at least I think it's an interesting idea to consider. The reason I want to make this video is to prepare you for the worst. The way I see it is that Santa Monica has a tough fight in choosing whether to make a well-written character or give us a much requested weapon. And it's very possible they will find a way, like I mentioned in my first theory, to have their cake and eat it too. But it's also possible they might not even give us Mjolnir as a weapon, and maybe we should be okay with this. First, they already seem to have improved combat greatly by adding old moves such as the grapple from God of War 3 and also shield customizations, something that can be a weapon in its own right. But they can also go with the route of giving us another weapon that's not Mjolnir. It's like we have tunnel vision when we think of this weapon, that's all we want. But Norse mythology has a plethora of weapons that could be really fun in gameplay. I've mentioned many times Freyr's sword that's capable of fighting by itself. But what about Heimdall's horn or Vidar's powerful shoe? These are all weapons that could be given to the player instead of giving us a weapon that's very similar mechanically to the axe. So if we don't get Mjolnir, try to understand that maybe they had a good reason for it. But maybe you disagree and you think Mjolnir as a weapon is a must in God of War Ragnarok. So whatever your thoughts are on this topic, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. As always, I want to give a big thanks to all of my members for supporting this channel monthly. People like Kieran, Ricardo Chiappe, Sharang Singh, Ghostwriter, Anhad, Sully, Kaptain Wu, Stenkot, and many more. Make sure this channel stays afloat monthly. This is the reason why I don't have that many sponsors. I don't feel like I need to, because my fans are supporting me monthly. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. I know it doesn't seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. So with that said, thanks for watching, and remember, go forth in the name of Ragnarok.